Hi, my name is Tim. Um, though I have for the most of my adult life intuitively known something was amiss with the way the income tax was administered, I did not have enough knowledge to take action. In other words, like most Americans, I was ignorant of what the law actually said, and thus of what it actually required of me. Somewhere around 1998, I began a focused study of the Internal Revenue Code, and as I suspect most who have done so, I found it virtually impossible to understand. However, I persisted and began to put some pieces together to realize that the ability of the feds to demand money from me seemed to be based upon the inaccurate testimony others gave, W-2s, 1099s, etc., whereby they declared that my money that I earned was taxable by the federal government, when in fact I believed that it wasn't. I had not read Pete's book at this point, Cracking the Code, but I was determined to stop giving my money to the feds if I did not indeed owe it. And again, even though I wasn't 100% certain, I was pretty sure that I did not owe it. So I arranged my work life, here my approach at the time, with what I knew, is I arranged my work life where no one was testifying erroneously that the money I earned was income, according to the code, and thus I had nothing withheld from my earnings, and thus I deemed from my understanding of the tax code that I had no reason to file an income tax return. Sometime in early 2004, I discovered Pete's book, Cracking the Code, and I read it cover to cover 3 times. I knew immediately that I had found what I had been looking for many years. I had made some errors in my reading of the Internal Revenue Code, and cracking the code filled in the gaps for me, and just in time, too. On 8/16/2004, I received a letter from the Internal Revenue Service stating that my, quote, income tax returns for 2000 and 2001 had been selected for examination, end quote. At the time, I found the wording curious since I had not filed any returns for those years. Though the letter asked me to call the IRS agent, I simply responded to the letter stating the following, and this is a quote from the letter that I wrote. I am in receipt of your letter dated August 16th, 2004. Your letter stated the following, quote, your federal income tax return for the years shown above has been selected for examination, end quote. The years you indicated are 2000 and 2001. This is confusing to me in that, to the best of my knowledge, there is no return to examine because I did not submit an income tax return for either 2000 or 2001. I did not submit returns for those years because, according to my understanding of the law and the code used to administer the law, I did not meet the criteria set forth that requires the submission of a return. Further, I did not have any withholdings that would have prompted me to file a return in order to obtain a refund of those withholdings. If you have information that leads you to believe I was required to file a return for 2000 or 2001, or if you know of withholdings for which I would be entitled to receive a refund, please provide me with said information so I can evaluate it under the light of the law and determine for myself the nature and relevance of any such information you may have. And thus ends the pertinent part of the letter that I wrote. I said some other things, but that was basically it. The agent and I corresponded back and forth a few more times. Each time he would try to get me to meet with him or call him, or better yet, he encouraged me to voluntarily file a return and say that I had income and owed tax on it. I held my ground, turning it on him every time, basically saying the same thing over and over. Basically saying, if you've got information that I don't have, please share it with me. I'm happy to see it. I'm happy to respond to it. But according to everything I have and know, I have no reason to file a tax return. I chose in my writings at the time not to cite the Internal Revenue Code in specifics at that point, because it seemed to me, from my understanding of the code, that until the Internal Revenue Service could show that they had evidence that I, one, had received income as defined in the code, and two, owed a tax based on that income, there was really nothing for me to refute, and the less I said, the better. The onus seemed to be upon them to show that I had earned money that met the definition of income as defined in the Internal Revenue Code. Toward the end of 2004, I received one last letter from the agent for the Internal Revenue Service. The letter said, and I have the letter, I just didn't take the time to go find it. It's stored away somewhere in my archives, collecting dust, and I just didn't really care to go digging through stuff, but I have it pretty well memorized because I was so pleased when I received it. So towards the end of 2004, I received that last letter, and in essence, it said, "We have completed our examination of your returns for 2000 and 2001 and have determined that you owe no tax. You should keep a copy of this letter," which I have. I have several copies of it. Again, they're filed away. Now, I've learned a lot since 2004. I've read Pete's book many more times. I follow his newsletter. I learn more every day. But though I still earn money through my labor, I still have no income as defined in the Internal Revenue Code, and I still have no one filing inaccurate testimony to the contrary. So from that standpoint, I still have no reason to file a tax return, though I certainly could do so and simply put zero. From where I sit, my choice is to not file at all, since I absolutely have no reason to. And I have nothing withheld from the money I earn, and therefore have no refund due me, which I would file certainly if I did, to obtain those withholdings back, because any money I am earning does not meet the definition of income in the Internal Revenue Code. However, if I ever find myself in the position where someone does give erroneous testimony to the Internal Revenue Service, thanks to Pete's book and my own research that confirms what Pete says, I know what to do. Now, this is very important. It's my life, it's my finances, it's my relationship with the federal government, and therefore I didn't at the time, and I still don't simply take Pete's word for it. When I read Pete's book that first 3 times, I got the companion CD, and I used it to help me look at the code myself deeper and fuller than I had been able to previously, and determine for myself my course of action based upon my understanding of the law. So I have used it, and I have verified that what Pete has written is the truth, and it is.